What happens to us in childhood, we carry with us for life. And many times we have insights into it and we're able to resolve it. We're able to work through it. We're able to move past it. But sometimes those things linger. And one of the things that oftentimes linger are these emotional triggers. If we were raised in a chaotic home where a lot of people were yelling or screaming, we're going to be triggered, emotionally triggered by loud noises, or if we hear an altercation or people start yelling, it's going to emotionally trigger us, and we're going to react much the same way we did as a child if we don't resolve it or come to terms with it. The other thing that's really difficult about emotional triggers is when you're triggered, when you're under the influence of a trigger, there's always somebody, something on the outside that you feel has control over you. You really are not sure that you can handle something. And therefore, like if you're in a relationship and something happens, your partner reacts in a way you didn't expect them to, they set off one of your triggers, they're not going to understand what you're going through. You can be out for dinner and hear a large bang. And if you have some trauma where you witness someone being shot or someone being an accident of some kind, that's going to trigger you, and there will be no recourse for that. Like you could make or break your relationship. If your partner felt totally inept and you weren't able to talk to them about what caused your emotional trigger and you hadn't resolved it, then that's going to come back to you again and again. I'm going to give you an example of this. I was in Italy several years ago, and we were in Siena, and it was the Great Palio Run. They do this every year. It's a race. But their horses, they don't treat the same way. And during the run, one of the horses fell and broke a leg. And I was there with a group of people from a particular organization and their spouses. And one of the women that was in the audience, who was in our group, had a severe reaction to the horse breaking. It's like, we all felt bad. Make no, that was normal and appropriate. But she had a really visceral type of reaction. That incident triggered something from her past. And she was not able to talk about it. She was screaming, she was crying, she was, inconsolable. And no one really knew what to do or how to comfort her. And it kind of made us all a little fearful. Like, we didn't know what was going on, and she obviously had not moved past it or taken control of this trigger, and so it had total control of her. There are ways that we coach clients into taking control of their emotional triggers. It's not easy, but it is possible. I think the most important thing is that you get from the very beginning, yes, you can do this, and you deserve to do this. This is another form of self-care for you, and practice makes perfect. It's like everything I give you guys, I want you to practice it. And sometimes in the beginning feels kind of odd, but I think understanding your emotional triggers and taking control of them is the most essential part of self-care you can really do, especially if you're going to have a relationship, and hopefully a committed relationship where you may bring children in the world, and then you're mentoring emotional control for them. The first thing you have to do is you have to identify your stress pattern. It's important because many times when people react to loud noises or they overreact to something that happens, they're totally numb to it. Like they're just on autopilot of reacting. So unless you can make note of it, write it down, and be very specific. Okay, when I hear a loud noise, this makes me feel jumpy, makes me anxious, makes me angry, makes me go back to how I felt as a child, helpless, scared, whatever. It's important that you have a list. You have identified what the trigger is. The trigger is the loud noise, and then your reactions are varied between those specifics that I just named. Number two, Name and tame your emotion. This is a concept that was brought to us by a psychologist named Dan Siegel, and he found out when you can name the emotion, you can tame it. It takes all the oomph out of it. So during this time, if you can name that loud noise triggered anger, if you can say that to yourself or to your partner, and then explain that anger came from my feeling as a child when this would happen, and name what the incident was where you first recalled it. Or let's say you were in a store and it got held up by a robber, and that robber came in and started screaming obscenities and making a very forceful push or accosting people. You will react to that. But it's important that when that comes up again in a certain incident that's triggered, maybe it's a smell, maybe it's a sound, that you automatically name it, to tame it, to calm it down, and are able to describe. Self-soothe is number 3. You know, we do not teach young people enough about the importance of self-soothing. Self-soothing is another way to reparent yourself or calm yourself down. Things a parent would have naturally done and taught you. When you get really upset, you breathe. You breathe deeply so you can feel the diaphragm go up and down, and you let all the air go out. This is going to calm down your heart rate, your cortisol levels, and it's going to take away that fight or flight feeling that oftentimes happens when you're in the middle of a trigger. And that's what gets the whole body, the whole system going. It's agitated. When you learn to self-soothe, you know the words to say to yourself. You know how to calm yourself down. You know that you start talking softer. You start listening more. You're training your body to respond to the trigger in a whole nother way. And in a sense, you're reparenting yourself. But it's okay. It's a good kind of reparenting. And lastly, rethink your relationship to trauma. Many times when we were traumatized as a child or as a young person or even an adult, we start going, oh my God, my life will never be the same. My innocence is robbed. I'm broken. You're not broken. You just have parts of your body, of your whole central nervous system that overreact. And they overreact because they're healthy. They're responding to a stimuli that scared you, and your body was preparing to keep you safe. That's not a bad thing. The only unfortunate part is if you're not in control of it, if you're just reacting, and then your body has to go through the whole cycle again because it makes others uncomfortable about how to help you. It's all about getting yourself the help and support it needs. And one way, the most important way you can do that is if you are aware of it and you already have a plan. I'm going to breathe deeply. I'm going to talk softly. I'm going to listen more. I'm going to shut off the thoughts in my head and I'm going to listen. I'm going to calm the whole system down. You are not broken about it. Trauma many times is a life-saving opportunity that you can learn that you survived that and that you have the skills to not only take care of yourself, but to mentor that for other people. I know many times when I'm flying, I get to see a lot of people with a lot of emotional triggers, and they'll hear something, they'll smell something, and they'll go into a panic mode, and I can actually observe it. So the most important thing is not that you can erase the backstory, because you can't, but you can learn to work with it, to re-soothe yourself, reparent yourself, calm yourself down so that now you're in control, not the trigger. And that's exactly where you want to be.